Hey everyone, I hope you're all enjoying your night so far. Are you? Yeah? Good? That's great. I must say it's very intimidating to come up here right after that fantastic talk by Andrew, but hopefully I can still present something very entertaining and also informative to you all. I'd just like to thank also the organizers for tonight, but especially Dr. Shane Huntington, who did nominate me to come up here tonight and speak. Thanks for throwing me under the bus, Shane. All right, so yeah, my name is Marina Yakou, and today I want to talk to you guys about this 2020 vision approach that we have to hopefully cure cancer. So this is me. Hello again. I want to first start by giving you guys a little bit of background about myself so you can understand why I love this quote, which basically says that my purpose and my career have collided, and now that is an amazing force. And I'll give you, to give you guys a bit of context as to why I think that. I'm going to go through, I guess, a little bit of my my lifeline. I guess it's really funny. It's as though I've died and I'm giving my own eulogy. But anyway, so I was born in 1993 in Detroit, Michigan. That is me as a baby. Or toddler. I really couldn't find a younger one. And then I was born in Detroit, Michigan. So that's, just for context, that's very icy and cold and snowy. Probably not when I was born specifically, but my parents were there a couple of years before, and it, definitely was cold for them. And then we moved, actually. So I don't even remember Detroit. Nothing. It's just on my birth certificate and on my passport and everything. We moved to Phoenix, Arizona. So my parents went from one extreme to another, and they went basically to a desert. And we stayed there for a few years. One of my sisters was actually born there. And then we moved again, a few years later, to Oceanside, California. And that's where I spent a majority of my childhood, actually. And I loved it. And I still, even though I'm 30 years old and I've probably spent a lot more of my life here in Australia, for some reason, that time in my life is so stuck. And I actually feel like that's where I grew, and I have grown up there, but, I feel like I've spent most of my life there. It's a beautiful place. And in terms of climate, it's like right there in between the snow and then the desert. So it's really nice and all year round, right? After that, my parents decided to move again in 2005, actually. And you can see we just completely crossed the oceans and moved continents, ended up in Melbourne, Australia. And that was in 2005, and up until today, we've been here. So this was a move as a family. So I'm one of 4 girls and a boy, and I'm the eldest. So I've put this here because I don't know how many of you guys know the little childhood story, Goldilocks and the 3 Bears. So I like to think that my parents were a bit like that. They're like, no, this place is not that. It's too cold. This place is a bit too hot. This place is nice, but then it's like, okay, Australia's a place to be. Like, this is where we're at. This is good for us. So that's my parents. And then in 2014, we're fast forwarding quite a bit here, but I ended up marrying basically my best friend, who I did meet here, John. And yeah, I guess I'm still here, so that's great. And so something that I really want to bring up, actually, is during my childhood, particularly when I started kindergarten, so, 5, 6 years old, one of the first parent-teacher interviews that my mom had with my teacher kind of told my mom that I'm a bit concerned about Marina. She's not listening. She seems to be playing up in class a bit. And I don't know if her grades are really, if she's learning anything. And my mom was quite concerned. And she said, okay, well, what's the issue? What do you mean? Is it behavioral? What do you think is going on? And she said, yeah, behavioral for sure. She's in the back, she's talking to everybody, and she's just not paying attention to me and then distracting others. My mom was like, wait a minute, where did you say she is? And she said, she's in the back. My mom was like, okay, great. So the next day, my mom took me to the optometrist. And we found out that I actually couldn't see. And so I was not paying attention because I couldn't see anything. Sure, I could hear, but, short attention span as a kid. And therefore, I was distracting a lot of the other kids sitting next to me. So I ended up having to get corrective lenses, and I still wear them to this day. And it was really hard because being that young and you have to get corrective lenses, you actually have to get, I got an eye patch, literally looked like a pirate for about 2 years of my life. And you had to wear it a lot of times throughout the day. And the reason why is because they thought, while you're younger, let's just train your eye that's lazy a bit to work harder and stuff. But, it's still lazy. It's probably lazier than it's ever been. And so I still wear glasses. But the point is that I've put that, in my kind of lifeline, because that was a very defining moment in my life. I can't forget the amount of bullying that I got for that. And, it didn't traumatize me. Don't worry, I'm fine. But, it's more about, you just realize how nasty and mean and cruel kids can actually be. So, of course, all the four eyes, there were no memes back then, but you can imagine the jokes and everything like that. So definitely got a lot of that. So I just wanted to highlight that in my timeline. So I messaged my mom, and literally this was a conversation today. I said, Mom, can you please send me a photo of when I was a kid, just any kid age, where I've got my glasses on? And she's literally replied saying, I'm so sorry, I do not have any, I promise. I looked through all the photo albums. And then I thought to myself, I'm like, of course, because even for school photos, I would literally take it off because I hated my glasses so much. And so then, to be honest with you, the only photo that I have, I feel, of me wearing my glasses is this one, and that's a lot older. So it's even past the time that I was bullied in school. But I just wanted to highlight that I did try and get a photo to show you. Okay, something happened in 2010 that was really the defining moment in my life that I feel like has led me, I guess, to even stand before you here today. Before 2010, for as long as I can remember, I was in love with architecture. I wanted to be an architect. I absolutely loved design and looking at buildings and understanding, and it's just gorgeous stuff, and I still do. I always say, if I ever have the time and energy in the future, I will probably go back and do it anyway. But in 2010, something really, really, really tough happened. And I was in year 12 here in Victoria, so we were doing final year VCE, year 12. And unfortunately, in a span of about 3 months from understanding the diagnosis to, unfortunately, the passing, my uncle passed away, in a blink of an eye. We were absolutely devastated as a family. It will happen here, actually, in Melbourne, and in fact, in the Peter Mac Hospital down at St. Andrew's Place in East Melbourne, before it became the big flashy building in Parkville. And so, in that moment, I thought to myself, so something I didn't mention in the beginning is that I am, my last name Yakou, so I am an Assyrian, and that is not Syrian from Syria. That is, we are the indigenous people of Iraq, so that was, I guess, we stemmed down from basically the ancient Mesopotamian civilization. But unfortunately, through war and everything, as you guys can imagine, a lot of people in my community and everything were either killed or, told to leave, well, actually not told, they kind of ran away from their homeland. And my parents were one of them. So really, I'm actually a first generation sort of born outside of modern day Iraq. And so the reason why I bring that up is because in that moment, I thought to myself, gee, you've got an opportunity, Marina, where you have been born into a Western country, you can speak the language very well, you're doing well in school, why not use it to do something good for the world and for the community? And so I did, and that's when I embarked many years later to do a PhD, which is what I'm still doing right now. And something that really triggered me to do it is that what I realized is, cancer does not discriminate. And just to prove it to you, I want you, audience here, just please raise your hand if you know somebody yourself or you know somebody that is affected by cancer in this room right now. And if you guys look around, there's not a single hand right now that I think is not up. And we're all from different backgrounds, from different, heritage. We look different. That just goes to show that it does not matter who you are, what socioeconomic status you have, what country you came from, what color your skin is, nothing matters. At the end of the day, cancer can affect us all. So for me, that was something that I can, leave behind in the world, and hopefully one day, and say that I contributed to. And I really hope I can. The hard thing, though, is that was 14 years ago. And since 2010, I've actually lost another 10 people of my closest family and friends to cancer. Many different types. It's not genetic. And these people are not necessarily related, and very different ages, by the way, from little kids to very elderly. But that just really, for me, just cemented it even more. And so here we are now. I began my PhD in 2021, and I'm here tonight at Nerd Night to talk to you guys about that. So that's the little timeline to sort of explain everything. And yeah, I like to think that hopefully we'll be able to sort of conquer cancer. And, call me cliche. Everyone said at the beginning of my PhD, by the end of your PhD, you will not be saying that you will be doing that. And, I'm 3 years in, about to submit my thesis in May, and I'm still saying that. So I'm very optimistic. Thank you. So to begin, I think let's define cancer. And now I know I can explain it to you guys by showing you some images and showing you some microscopy slides and things like that. But I know that everyone really does know what cancer is. So I thought I'd go to the dictionary and just get a definition for the sake of it. This is from the Oxford Dictionary. So it says that cancer is a disease that's caused by an uncontrolled division of abnormal cells in a part of the body. Something that really struck me in this definition is the term uncontrolled. That's indeed true. So I thought, how can I explain that to an audience that may be from very different backgrounds, may not be scientists and everything? What does that mean? I will put it for you this way. There are so many systems and processes and things going on in our body that control different parts and other systems, and it's just this amazing circuit. If you can imagine, just one thing goes wrong, and then, a lot of bad things can happen. And cancer is just one of those, results downstream. But to explain it a little bit more, I thought, what does that mean, the word uncontrolled, in a world like ours right now? And how can I visualize this for you guys? So here's a picture of our city of Melbourne. My husband is a builder, and I couldn't help. I guess it makes sense because I wanted to be an architect. But anyway, I couldn't help myself but to include something to do with building, right? And so here's the city of Melbourne, and of course we have very tight regulations and rules in the building industry, as you guys can imagine, to ensure that we have such a beautiful city, right? But what does it look like if we didn't have rules and regulations? What would uncontrolled building industry look like? The Tower of Pisa, right? Okay, maybe some of you guys weren't there for that. What about this one? It's probably a bit more familiar. Yeah, Fed Square. Now, Andrew mentioned a word, and I swear I said I'm going to come up here and I'm going to say it, and I've forgotten it. But he did say the definition of it was irregularity in architecture. So whatever that word is, that's how I would describe Federation Square. But that's what an uncontrolled sort of environment would look like, right, in a modern day world. Just to sort of really bring this home a bit more, here is an aerial view of an airport, right? I don't know how many of you guys when you go to an airport and you're waiting for your plane, I like to sort of sit by the window and I watch all the planes. And often when I'm sitting there, I just think, oh my gosh, all those lines and everything. Just imagine someone accidentally painted it in the wrong direction. Can you imagine the downstream effects of that? And so I guess that would kind of look like that, right? And so to sort of explain cancer, it's basically when something is uncontrolled and it remains uncontrolled, it escapes from the authorities that can control it. Bad things can happen, and that's exactly what how I would describe cancer in a human body. So how do we treat cancer? Now, I know many of you guys are probably very much aware of chemotherapy and radiotherapy there, and of course, surgical resection. And they're the very standard sort of treatments that were around for many years. But unfortunately, those kind of treatments don't necessarily target the cancer cells specifically. What they actually do is just target everything, right? And so you get people that have hair loss and that have really bad side effects, etc. And that's really nasty, and it's not fun for neither the patient nor their loved ones to see them go through all of that either. And so something that came along very recently in the last decade to 15 years or so was immunotherapy. So immunotherapy really revolutionized cancer treatment, or so we thought it would. And basically what immunotherapy does is you have a cancer patient who's given immunotherapy, and immunotherapy, as a term would describe, is basically a therapy that targets the immune system. So technically, our body, through that controlled process, should be picking up any problems and getting rid of it, right? But in the case of cancer, as you guys saw in my explanations, there's something is uncontrolled for, and therefore it's getting away from the immune system. And perhaps we've also figured out that the immune system is becoming a bit lazy and hasn't been able to pick these things up. So what immunotherapy does is essentially goes in and tickles the immune system, says, hey, wake up, like just, kind of wakes it up a little bit. So when we give patients immunotherapy, there are, in many different types of cancers, of course, patients that respond, and we've seen some amazing success with immunotherapy in those cases. But then, very unfortunately, we have many, many, many non-responding patients. And so that is a big problem, because not only are some of those patients not responding, but then they're also experiencing some even more worse side effects than the chemotherapies and radiotherapies, because all of a sudden their immune cells are a lot more activated, and they're even attacking, normal parts of their body. So this really led me to think about how I can explain this as well. And if you guys can sort of humor me for a second, and just if you guys close your eyes and imagine you're a little kid again, and you've been invited to a birthday party, and you're outside in the playground, there's all these kids running around, there's a piñata hanging up on the ceiling, or somewhere on the tree, and you're next in line with a baseball bat to hit that piñata, okay? So open your eyes now, and I want to show you an image, but you have my eyes. Okay, so all of a sudden, you can't see the difference between that piñata and the little girl that's standing in the back with the same exact colors in her. That is horrible, right? How is that going to end up? And so immunotherapy is essentially what we've realized is that we can make it a bit more targeted. It was great because it was targeted to immune cells, but I think we can make it a bit more targeted. And I'll explain what I mean. So basically, I guess this slide is back up here is to say that, immunotherapy, while it revolutionized cancer treatment, the but is that we do need new targets. And we need targets that are really specific to different tumors. So how do we do this? If we talk about what immunotherapy actually targets, so I talked about the immune cells, it actually targets a lot of these immune cells that are found in the blood. So these are the current targets of immune cells. The blood circulates throughout your entire body, right? It goes through every organ and tissue. It's also considered sterile, so there's no living bacteria, viruses, fungi, because if there is, you're either have an infection that hopefully your blood immune cells can clear, or unfortunately you'll die of sepsis, right? So those are the current immune cells that immunotherapy targets, but that's what's given even to people who have, for example, bowel cancer. So bowel cancer in the large bowel. Right? And so, theoretically, you would expect that if there are immune cells in the bowel, maybe we should actually go straight to them, and instead of attacking all the other immune cells that can maybe cause some problems or not work as effectively. And so that's where I suppose my PhD comes in. I basically look at bowel cancer, and I say, okay, in a normal, steady state, healthy person environment, the large bowel consists of these red, invading bacteria that we actually do experience every day in the food that we eat, in the air that we breathe, any pollutants, all that kind of stuff. They pass by our body because our immune system is so good at pushing them out. We also experience these bluey green commensal bacteria. So these are bacteria that live on and within our gut. And I'm sure you guys, if you watch any mainstream media, you have heard many times now about gut health and the gut microbiome and how to improve your gut health. Take probiotics, blah, 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 right? And that's really because they want to target the bacteria that live within us and are actually really good for us. And the reason why I suggested we look in the gut is because right there underneath that big living sort of microbiome of bacteria that live inside us in health are immune cells. And they basically protect us. And they are sitting right there along the lining of our gut. And that lining acts like a barrier, so a wall between, the outside, which would be considered all the bacteria and everything, and the inside, which is us and our immune system. And so they're really right there in the forefront of where they need to be, exactly where cancer occurs in terms of bowel cancer. So, as I said, they do defend the barrier and they limit infections, etc. So they are considered like the guards of our gut. And how do they communicate with bacteria, and how does that then, influence tumor growth, for example, in the context of cancer? So what I did in my PhD was really compare the pair, because anything that's been already done in terms of the literature currently, in terms of studying immune cells within our gastrointestinal tract, has predominantly been done in the small bowel. But let me just show you how different small and large bowel are. Small bowel, it absorbs water functionally and nutrients from the food that we eat. It has significantly less bacteria. It doesn't actually harbor that much bacteria as the large bowel does. And cancer and other diseases within the small bowel are a lot more rare. And now let's see the large bowel. So the large bowel harbors actually the largest body of bacteria that live on or within our human bodies. And more importantly, it's obviously more prone to cancer. And so that was really interesting. If we've done all our studies in the past on the small bowel and how immune cells within the small bowel interact with bacteria that are not even really there, then aren't we missing a piece of the puzzle? And so what my PhD sort of is looking at is straight directly into the large bowel, the immune cells that are within it, and those bacteria that harbor it, to understand those interactions a bit better and how that influences cancer. And that helps us to basically understand how we can, I guess, use these bacteria in the future to either, awaken those immune cells in the large bowel and fight cancer, or dampen them if they're indeed, too much killing, for example. So I've just drawn up a little cartoon here. So we have an example of an immune cell right there, and that would be a T cell. I don't know, I'm sure during COVID everyone has heard about these killer T cells. Yep, so that's a T cell right there, and that's directly from the large bowel. That's not the one that circulates through the blood. It's very specific, and it stays tissue-specific in the bowel. It does not move. Those are bacteria that interact with the immune cell. And here's a tumor in the bowel. In a normal setting, what we found in my PhD is that these T cells are able to produce these killing properties. It's almost like they're shooting ammunition towards the tumor. However, it's just not enough. For some reason, it's not enough, because the same exact T cell in the small bowel does a lot better. But why? What we actually found was that those bacteria can influence the T cell and make it lazy, okay? So there's a gene that it sort of makes the T cell express to make it a bit more lazy. And when we delete that gene in the T cell, we see that no matter whether the bacteria is there or not, we see that all of a sudden it's able to produce a lot more of that ammunition and eventually limit the tumor growth. Now, that was the finding, I suppose, of my PhD, in a nutshell, because it's been 3 years. But really, what it shows is that first of all, there's so much more we need to learn, and even just that finding, there's still many ongoing studies to understand in a lot more detail exactly what is the bacteria doing, how is it doing this to the T cells, and why, of course. But something that I realized as I was making this slide, and the reason why I wanted to bring up the point about the bullying about my glasses, is that throughout my PhD, I feel like it's a bit symbolic that not only have I been able to kick those bullies basically right out of the park by showing them what I can do, but also we actually showed the world. So we made world news in October in 2023. We were on Channel 9, national and local news. We were in a lot of newspapers around Victoria. We also made a lot more of the world news, including the Sky News Arabia. And I think that that's really just goes to show that you can not only use that 20/20 vision, put the glasses on, have a more targeted approach towards cancer, but also towards bullies. So we went from something like this, where I couldn't see, it was really hard, and I really tried to hide it a lot, to something a bit more like this, not just in cancer and hopefully for future therapies for a lot of people in the future, but also for any bullies. So please continue to wear your glasses and have 20/20 vision. I think it's really important. And I think that that is the approach to cure cancer in the future. Hopefully, at the end of the day, all I really hope before the day I die is that we do have better outcomes for cancer patients, because they certainly deserve it. It could be any one of us, it could be any one of our family members, and it is. So thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time.
Holy shit. How cool is that? I don't know about you guys, but I just left that talk so hopeful for the future.
Thanks.
Also, though, are you going to do a second PhD where you stop us from having to wear glasses?
You know what's funny is that, so I still wear glasses, by the way. Like, the doctor can't even give me contacts because apparently they're not going to be strong enough. I would still have to wear glasses on top. And I said to Shane that I've got a prop today because I was going to do a really symbolic thing and put my glasses on at the end of the talk. So currently I can't actually see you guys that well, but anyway, that's okay.
It's all right. They're not the most beautiful crowd ever. Can I get some house lights, actually? Because they are. Look at them. Oh, wait, you can't. All right, so we have time for a couple questions. Any hands? Yep, just up the back there.
So if I understand right, you're saying in research about flora composition affecting the outcomes that immune cells achieve suppressing cancer. Did you actually look at what determines whether someone has a favorable microflora composition?
Did you determine if people have the correct composition of their flora?
So the reason why my study was very unique compared to what's been happening in the last 5 to 10 years in this field with microbiome and cancer is that we were talking about the microbiome as a whole. We're not even looking at a specific bacteria or what composition does a certain person have. It's just the presence of the microbiome in general does have this effect on the T cells. And so we have shown this through antibiotic treatment of both in preclinical models, but also we see that in a lot of the reports where a lot of these patients actually have to, when they go in hospital to get these treatments, they actually have to go on antibiotic treatment. And so this study really shows that that can be detrimental to the outcome of their treatment. So yeah, thanks for your question.
Okay, any other questions? Yep, just you.
Thank you for your talk. It was super inspiring.
Thanks.
I just wanted to know, through your own opinion, why do you think cancer is so prevalent today versus 50 years ago? What do you think? What's the real big reason why
I love that.
so many people have cancer?
Why do you think cancer is seemingly more prevalent today than in the past?
Thanks for asking that. I think that's an excellent question, and I hope I hope the message has come across that the microbiome is so important. And so if I answer your question with the microbiome, it would mean the amount of dietary changes we've had as a civilization over time. So you look at people that are still on the Mediterranean diet around the world, they don't have as many cases as we do. And so we do consume a lot more processed foods these days, maybe inorganic foods. How has that changed the composition, so the makeup of our bacteria in our gut over time? And that would indeed influence cancer. Thanks.
Yep, one more just at the back there.
You mentioned that the studies, past studies, have focused on the small bowel rather than the large bowel. Why?
Why have past studies focused more on the small rather than large?
It is so hard to work on the large bowel. It is time consuming. My husband's here, you can actually ask him. I spend sometimes 22 hours in the lab processing the large bowel tissue. It is a very time consuming thing. It's much easier with a small bowel, and you get a lot more immune cells to then analyze. But contextually, it just doesn't make sense. If the cancer is not there, why are we looking there, right? So, yeah, thanks for your question, though.
All right, that's probably all we have time for,
Thanks,
but
all.
don't worry,
Appreciate it.
she'll be around both after the show and in the break. We're going to go for another 10-minute break before the next talk. Thank you very much.